Serious, what's something creepy that has happened to you that you still occasionally think about to this day? Attention! Serious tag notice. Jokes, puns, and off-topic comments are not permitted in any comment. Parent or child. Parent comments that aren't from the target group will be removed, along with their child replies. Report comments that violate these rules. Posts that have few relevant answers within the first hour. And posts that are not appropriate for the serious tag will be removed. Consider doing an AMA request instead. Thanks for your cooperation and enjoy the discussion. I am a bot, and this action was performed automatically. Please contact the moderators of this subreddit /message/compose/to/r/ask Reddit if you have any questions or concerns. When I was around 11, I was at softball practice, and for whatever reason the practice ended early, so I had to wait at the park for my grandpa to come and pick me up. I ended up having to wait alone for about 30 minutes because I didn't have a cell phone to call and tell my grandpa that practice ended early. I remember sitting on the swings when an adult man, in his 30s or 40s, came and sat down next to me. He asked if he knew me and I said no, and he told me that I must just have one of those pretty faces that feel recognizable to anybody. I remember feeling happy about the compliment and I kept talking to him. Eventually, he told me that he had his car with him and that he could drive me home to my grandparents' house so that they didn't have to worry about picking me up and I wouldn't have to wait any longer. Being 11, I didn't think anything of this and proceeded to get into this stranger's car. Luckily, my grandpa showed up just in time and I remember seeing his car and jumping out to meet him. The stranger sped off without talking to my grandpa, and that was the last I ever heard about it. This is such a vivid memory for me, and I often find myself thinking about what would have happened to me and what a different person I would be today if my grandpa hadn't shown up when he did. It's peeped up that no adult from your softball team waited with you for your grandfather to arrive and instead left you there all by yourself. Seriously. I coach my kids' teams and I never leave the field/court until everyone on my team has been picked up, whether it's 30, 45 minutes, whatever. Probably BC. I've read too many creepy stories. Pretty sure I almost got kidnapped when I was a kid. I was 10 years old walking home from school and an elderly couple driving by stopped and asked me for directions. They were looking for the street I was walking towards. So I pointed them in that direction. Even though my directions were very clear. Both were acting confused and asked if I can get in the car and guide them there and then they would drive me home. I told them it was fine. My house was right here, I lied. They were pressuring/guilting me a lot and being too nice about wanting to drive me home. It gave me a really weird feeling in my stomach. So I pretended to walk towards a house that wasn't mine and they drove off. Smart kid. Smoking a blunt with the peeper who had raped and murdered a friend of mine the previous evening. We were all hypothesizing what had happened while the psycho who had done it was casually trying to plant disinformation. Cops came for him later that afternoon. Undefined. When I was 10 years old, I lived in the middle of rural Alabama. We had some odd neighbors. Being curious kids, my friend and I followed my neighbor and his son and daughter one day when they left their house and walked into the woods. I was very familiar with the area because it was back when kids could roam free until the street lights came on. Anyway, we trailed them for about 2 miles. Through the woods, across an old cemetery, and down a railroad. They stopped at a clearing beside the tracks and my friend and I hid opposite of them and watched. They started digging and kept pulling up bones and putting them in a bucket. We got scared and bolted. I immediately told my parents, but they didn't believe me. I'm 32 and remember that day clearly. I buried a roadkill bobcat I found once. And dug it up later to finish cleaning the bones to put them together as a collection. Hope your neighbors were doing something similar. This is common processing for cleaning bone where I'm from. Let nature do the work, then boil and set in the sun to bleach them. When I was in 3rd grade, I was home alone with my quadriplegic grandma from after school until my mom came home. One day the phone rings. And I answer it and an unfamiliar man's voice says, "Hey, just one more bite. Did you just get home from school?" I say, "Yeah." "Who is this?" Instead of answering me, he started asking things like, "Do you ever touch yourself? Do you like to look at girls?" Being in third grade, of course, I was like, "Nope." And hung up pretty quick. I told my parents, but nothing ever came of it. I still wonder to this day who it was, how they knew my name, and my whereabouts. This was back on a corded landline with no caller ID either. Undefined. I had a similar thing happen to me when I was around the same age. But I was with my whole family. This guy was at least high school age, and my dad got so mad he took the phone and threatened the guy. Never heard from him again. I think it was a neighbor down the street. Still like, WTF. When I was about 13, myself and a friend were walking to a middle school dance. I lived right across the street from the school. From my house there was about a 50-meter sidewalk to it from the main road. Anyways, as we're standing at the traffic light, waiting for our turn, I noticed a man in a van and a person in another car yelling at each other. I'm 100% sure I saw the man in the van wave a gun at the person. So he pulls up to the light and is waiting. He calls to me and my friend. Says he needs directions. Who TF asked 13-year-olds for directions? I pull my friend's arm and tell her we need to leave. We start walking back towards my house away from the guy, and he got out. Left the van right there at the light. My friend and I take off. Full tilt. Make it halfway down the path before ducking into some side bushes. We're sitting there with our hands pressed over our mouths while trying to be as still and small as possible. I'm trembling and can hear my heart pounding in my ear. The man stands at the end of the walkway staring down towards my house. Luckily there's quite a few houses along the block, so it would have been impossible to tell which one we ducked into. Clear as day. In his hand at his hip is a gun. He finally leaves and my friend and I run back to my house to call my mom and the cops. I refused to walk to school after that. We had something similar happen. A friend and I were breaking glass bottles at the boat ramp near my house. This guy pulls up and we hid in the bushes. We were 11 yo. And this guy tells us to come out because I'm a police officer. He kept yelling for us to come out. The bushes were really thick and short. Like a tunnel. And he couldn't get to us. I have seen his truck there before. And I'm 80% sure he wouldn't have abducted us. But you never know? A self-defense instructor once told me that if you get into a car, your chances of surviving an attack go down by 75%. Yeah. I grew up with my mom always teaching me, never let them take you to a second location. She always taught me to do whatever it took to not be taken. Right down to grabbing dog poop if you had to. Thankfully I never had to use that advice. I had a stalker in college. Had to move dorm rooms and building 4 times in the middle of the night. Friends would help me get to my dorm by pretending we were going to theirs and making sure no one was around when I'd go into mine. He found 2 of the dorms and left notes in my room. It's been over 11 years and I live in a completely different state, but every once in a while I get the feeling I'm being watched and panic. I briefly had a stalker in college as well. I met him on Tinder and went on one really bad date where he told me he had in fact lied about his name and age, and I got freaked out and ended the date. A couple days later I left my apartment where he picked me up because of some unrelated roommate problems and was living in my car before the university gave me a dorm room. Then a couple days after that I get a call from one of the aforementioned roommates saying a guy dropped something off for me at 8 a.m. This dude lived in central New Jersey and I went to college in NYC. He made the trip out to give me a well-used hard copy of an album I had mentioned liking. Apparently his favorite album from his personal collection. A drawing of us. He gave me disproportionate anime titties. It looked like a 13-year-old boy's idea of a peepee woman, and wrote a long letter. The gist of which was, if I can't have you, no one can. Thankfully I wasn't in that apartment anymore. But after class that day I saw him waiting outside my car in the university parking lot. The car where I lived. I noped out of there really quickly and told the school. Which is why they gave me the room to begin with. He kept texting me and I kept blocking him. He must have made 15 new social media accounts before he got the idea. I'm still scared of ever going to Central Jersey because I'm scared I'll run into him and he'll follow me home. Leave a like and a comment if you liked the video. Check out more Reddit related video, I am posting them daily. Subscribe to see more Reddit content.